Imagine climbing to the top of a 200-meter rock in the middle of a dense jungle and discovering a royal palace waiting for you. An entire palace complex in the sky with gardens, pools, running water, giant frescoes. Built more than 1,500 years ago. Historians still can't fully agree on why it was built, or whether it was a royal palace, a military fortress, or something else entirely. Sigiriya is one of the Sri Lanka's most extraordinary landmarks. Its name means Lion Rock. UNESCO recognizes it as a World Heritage Site. Archaeologists regard it as one of the finest examples of ancient urban planning ever discovered. I'm Kristina, and this is the story of Sigiriya, a place where history, mythology, engineering, and art collide. This landmark is located in the Matali district of central Sri Lanka. From the air, what strikes you first is the geometry. The water gardens below are perfectly symmetrical. The terraces cut into the rock face are precise, and at the very summit, nearly 200 meters above the jungle floor, the foundations of a royal complex that once held the king's entire world. But let's start with a question that nobody has fully answered. Who, or what, had the ambition, the resources, and the knowledge to build this? The most widely accepted historical account places the construction of Sigiriya in the late 5th century CE, around 477 AD. The king credited with building it is Kashyapa I, and his story is, to put it plainly, extraordinary and dark. Kashyapa was not the rightful heir to the throne. He was the eldest son of King Datusena, but he was born to a lower caste concubine, not the royal queen. The legitimate heir was his younger half-brother, Moggallana, born of noble blood. Kashyapa, it seems, could not accept that. Together with the king's own nephew and army commander, he staged a coup, overthrew his father, and seized the throne. Datusena was imprisoned and, on Kashyapa's order, buried alive inside a prison wall. The ancient chronicle, the Mahavamsa, does not let Kashyapa off lightly. It records that before Datusena was killed, Kashyapa offered his father one last insult. He allowed the old king to visit his greatest achievement, the Kalawewa reservoir he had spent his reign building. Datusena stepped into the water, turned to his captors and said simply, "This is all the treasure that I possess." He was pointing to the water, to the good he had done. Kashyapa, on hearing this, had him killed. His people named him Pitrugataka Kashyapa, Kashyapa the patricide. Rejected by his people and fearing the day his brother came back with an army, Kashyapa made a decision. He would move the entire royal capital from Anuradhapura, where it had been for centuries, to somewhere no army could easily reach. He chose a volcanic monolith of gneiss rising nearly 200 meters from the flat jungle floor. Sheer on all sides, visible for miles, he called it his Alakamanda. In Hindu mythology, Alakamanda, sometimes written Alaka, is the celestial city of Kubera, the god of wealth, king of the Yakshas, lord of all the world's treasures. It is described as a place built among the clouds, more magnificent than anything on earth. Kashyapa, the parasite king, despised by his own people, was declaring, "My city will be like the city of the gods." And here is where it gets genuinely extraordinary. Because Kashyapa did not just put a fortress on top of the rock. He built an entire city. Water gardens at the base with fountains that still work seasonally today, fed by ancient hydraulics. Terraced gardens climbing the slope. An outer and inner moat, citadels, audience halls, private chambers. Estimates suggest that constructing the complex to the summit required around 3 million bricks. 3 million, carried up a nearly vertical rock face in the 5th century. And among the building materials found here, something that raises immediate questions: large blocks of white marble. White marble is not native to this region of Sri Lanka. It had to be transported, and these are not small pieces. How those blocks were moved to the site and then elevated up the rock is something engineers and archaeologists are still working to explain. Kashyapa ruled from Sigiriya for 18 years. When Moggallana finally returned from South India with an army, Kashyapa descended from his fortress to meet him in an open battle. But his war elephant changed direction, perhaps strategically, perhaps in a panic. His soldier misread it as a retreat. The army broke. Kashyapa, the king who had built a palace in the sky, took his own life on the battlefield. Sigiriya passed to Buddhist monks, who used it as a monastery for centuries before the jungle slowly reclaimed it. It wasn't seen by the outside world again until 1831, when a British officer named Jonathan Forbes came across it, half buried in vegetation, and changed how the world understood ancient Sri Lankan civilization. I want to dwell for a moment on engineering, because I think that it is genuinely one of the most underappreciated things about Sigiriya. We talk about it as a palace, but it is, in the most precise sense of the word, a feat of urban planning that modern scholars still study. Sigiriya's layout reflects an extraordinary command of both symmetry and asymmetry. The Western Water Garden is one of the oldest landscaped gardens in the world, and it operates on a hydraulic system of underground pipes and surface channels that distribute water across the entire complex. During the rainy season, the fountain is still active. A hydraulic system built 1500 years ago still functions. The Sanskrit poet Kalidasa, who lived around a century before Kashyapa, called this rock the mirror for goddesses, a place already associated with divine beauty long before any palace was built here. Then there is the water tank, carved directly into the rock near the summit. This is not a cistern dug into soil, this is a chamber cut into volcanic rock designed to collect and hold rainwater. It never fully dries up in a fortress that could be besieged. That is not a luxury, that is a survival mechanism. Whoever designed it understood water management at a level that is, for the 5th century, genuinely remarkable. The scale of organization required for Sigiriya keeps pulling researchers back. You needed to quarry, transport, and lift millions of bricks. You needed to source non-native marble from elsewhere and move it to site. You needed a hydraulic engineering team capable of designing a water system that would outlast the civilization that built it by over thousands of years. You needed artists capable of drawing frescoes on vertical cliff faces. All of this coordinated simultaneously in a pre-industrial world. Halfway up the rock, you reach them, the frescoes, painted directly on the sheltered western face of the cliff. And after 1500 years, the colors are still vivid. Ochre, red, green. The figures are women. They are painted from the waist up, often shown holding flowers. Their jewelry is elaborate. Their expressions are calm, almost timeless. They are known as the Sigiriya maidens, or in some traditions as Apsaras, celestial nymphs of Hindu mythology, who dwell on Mount Kailasa and attend the gods. These frescoes were painted using a wet fresco technique, pigment applied directly to wet plaster, bonding as it dries, which is part of why they have survived. Art historians note that the style reflects a combination of realism and idealism, unusual for that period. The faces have individual character, but the forms suggest something elevated, otherworldly. Some scholars believe they represent the women of Kashyapa's harem. Others believe they are manifestations of the divine feminine, woven into the rock itself. Just below the frescoes is the mirror wall, the Katapath Pavura in Sinhala. It is a polished plaster surface so reflective that originally you could see your own face in it as you walked past. And people have been leaving their responses to Sigiriya on this wall since at least the 6th century. Over 600 of these verses were deciphered. They call them kurutugi, scribbled songs. The writers had names like Agboy, Tindikasub, Vajur Mihind. They were ministers and monks and soldiers and metal workers. One, a noble man called Mahinda, wrote, I saw the golden-colored ones on the rock, and since then nothing has been in my mind but them. Another, who gave his name as Budal, wrote something more irreverent. Since all the others wrote poems, I did not. And then there is this one which has stayed with me since I first read it. The ladies who are like lightning have caused the hearts of even the strong to tremble. Now, I want to be careful here. I want to be clear about what is documented history and what is a legend. But I would also be doing this place a disservice if I did not tell you the other story, because for a significant number of people connected to Sri Lankan tradition, Sigiriya is not primarily the story of Kashyapa. In certain Hindu and local traditions, Sigiriya is known by an older name, Alakamandawa. And in these traditions, the original builder was not a 5th century king. It was Kubera, also known as Vice Ravana, son of the sage Vishrava, king of the Yakshas, god of all wealth and treasures. Kubera is described in the Ramayana as the original lord of Lanka, before his half-brother Ravana, the 10-headed demon king, overthrew him and seized the island. According to some local folklore, it was on this very rock that Kubera's palace stood. In the Ramayana, Ravana rules Lanka from a magnificent sky fortress. He is a scholar, a warrior, and a builder. He stole the Pushpaka Vimana, the flying chariot, from Kubera himself. In Sri Lankan folk tradition, Ravana is a deeply complex figure, a demon king to Rama's devotees, but a great sovereign and architect to many Sri Lankans who identify with Lanka's ancient glory. The hydraulic system that is too advanced, the marble that shouldn't be there, the water tank carved from solid rock that never dries, the frescoes of divine women on the walls. In the Ravana tradition and in older Yaksha clan legends, these are not the achievements of a mortal king with a guilty conscience. They are the mark of something older, a civilization or a presence that understood the world differently. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. The archaeological consensus attributes Sigiriya to Kashyapa, and that account is well supported by Mahavamsa and by excavation evidence. But the Mahavamsa was written by Buddhist monks with their own perspective. And the questions that the engineering raises, the marble, the drill holes, the hydraulics, the precision, don't have tidy answers. The Mahavamsa itself records that Kashyapa built his palace to be like another Alakamanda, like the city of Kubera, which means even the official chronicle acknowledges the inspiration was divine. Whether it was only the inspiration or something more is a question this place keeps asking. If all of this has inspired you to see Sigiriya for yourself, getting here is surprisingly straightforward. The rock is located in Sri Lanka's cultural triangle, around 3 to 4 hours by road from Colombo and about 2 hours from Kandy. Most visitors stay in nearby Sigiriya or Dambulla, both of which offer easy access to the site. The best time to visit is during the dry season, from December to April, when skies are clearer and climbing conditions are more comfortable. To avoid both the heat and the crowds, many travelers begin the ascent shortly after sunrise. The climb involves more than 1,000 steps, But along the way, you'll pass the famous frescoes, the mirror wall, the lion terrace, and panoramic views across the surrounding jungle. And a piece of advice: give yourself time. Sigiriya isn't just a place to tick off a list. It's a place to wonder, to look closely, and to let your imagination fill in the gaps between history, legend, and the landscape that surrounds it. A king seeking safety, a fortress in the sky, ancient engineers solving impossible problems, legends of gods, demons, and lost civilization. Sigiriya is all of these things. And yet, none of them fully explain what you are looking at. Perhaps that's the secret of this place. The more you learn about it, the more mysterious it becomes. And as the sun sets over the Sri Lankan jungle, one thing is clear. Some of history's greatest wonders are not the ones we understand. They are the ones we don't. I'm Kristina for RTV Global Network. Ayabawan.